Like, that is a ridiculous thing to try to say to people. So I think we need to run for the cause of preventing extinction at all of the other immediate harms and risks that are affecting people. And once they come in and you're talking and you're listening to them about what's affecting them, then you can be like, hey, you know what? I hear you about all that stuff, and I have to tell you,
not only that,
even crazier. Like, you won't even believe this. Like, you think
check this out,
right? But I can't walk in the front. That can't be the front door conversation. I've got to be in the living room.
That's right.
I think I have that conversation.
I mean, as you know, right? It is the tried and true. There's a reason that every news report starts with the story of a single person, right? If you start off with, here is the enormous abstract threat, coming for all of us, no one can relate to that. And that is absolutely true. And it turns out there's a scientific reason for that. There's a guy, one of the descendants of one of the intellectual descendants of Daniel Kahneman, who I mentioned earlier, is a researcher who studied the optimal number of people suffering in a story to produce the greatest empathy in the audience. He did this big study about that. And he found, because he was looking at the Syrian refugees who were dying trying to get across the Mediterranean to Europe in droves, and why it was that the charitable giving wasn't really working. Those campaigns weren't drumming up very much money from Europe. And then until suddenly this one poster came out that began to just like crush it on getting people to donate money. And it was the picture of this little kid who had drowned on the shore. It was a little 2-year-old boy who had drowned on the shore. And he, in the study, discovered that the optimal number to produce the greatest amount of empathy from somebody was one death.
Wow.
And that the number, your empathy goes down exponentially as the numbers of deaths go up.
Wow.
So once you're at 10,000, nobody cares anymore, basically.
Wow.
And so I think there's something about, I mean, I talk about, I have this other sort of world. I'm in around sort of the science of effective storytelling, because so much of what I'm trying to do is change the narrative on this stuff. And we talk a lot about the concept of your campfire brain. This is that something related to that ancient instinctive brain that we've been talking about here, right? Your brain is built for near-term immediate threat. It's not built for abstract threats. It can't do abstract threats.
Yeah.
I once visited this tribe way the hell out in the middle of nowhere in Tanzania who live the way we all did like 60,000 years ago. They're nomadic. They don't have last names. They don't have marriage. And one thing they don't have is words for numbers greater than 5. They don't do bigger than 5, because why would you need it? More than 5 people is a lot of people. Gonna see you 5 moons from now? Whatever. See you later.
Right. We'll talk about it then.
We'll talk about it then. We don't do big abstract threats. We're not built as a society, not as a society, as an organism. We're not built to process it that way. So you have to give it to what's on people's doorstep before you can get them thinking about abstract stuff. I think you're absolutely correct about that. I would also point out that the studies have shown that, especially with AI, alarmism, I don't like the word doomerism, but alarmism, I am definitely alarmed. I'm super alarmed. And so I do a lot of talking about what's alarming me. But one of the side effects of too much alarmism is that it tends to turn off exactly the wrong people. And so it is people in underserved communities. It is women more than men. Those demographics are the ones to say, well, hell with it. I'm not going to engage in this topic at all.
Right. I'll just click out.
I'll just click out. And those people, as a result, then get, blindsided when the thing comes for their jobs or the rest of it. And so I think both for keeping the right people engaged, or keeping all people equally engaged, and with playing to our ancient instincts, which we have to understand in order to communicate properly. Yeah, I think you're absolutely. I really admire what you're talking about. I think you're absolutely right. That you gotta let people in at where they can relate to it.
Yeah, I'm to the viewers out there, the traditional AI safety people. Like, this is where it's got to go. It really does. Yeah. I'm going to be pulling hard at all 26 to pull it this way, because we cannot say to these people, "Don't worry about your family. Worry about this thing you can't imagine."
I'd like to, I also find, I'm literally having this thought as I say it. I mean, I think there's probably a couple of really good, analogous areas of threat that you could use for communicating the bigger thing, right? Because I wonder if the 10,000 dead versus 1 person dead, I'm thinking about there's the extinction of all humanity, but then there's the extinction of blues music, right? Which is what my dad definitely experienced there, right? Imagine a world with no whatever it is, no art or no blah, blah, blah. Would you like that? No? Sounds bad? Well, try this one. I think there's a one death that you could articulate versus 10,000 deaths. I don't know what it is exactly, but anyway,
almost like the social media probably companies know exactly what it would be for each one of us and could spin out custom content that would be laser darted on our thing.
Totally. Absolutely. They know it, and they're probably not ready to share that. That's right.
Yeah, that is wild. You reminded me in the needing to tell a news story through an individual person. That's so true. I had a news director who would say to me, and I've never heard anything like this, like to be like, that's a newspaper story about something. And the newspaper story would be like, 15% tax hike. And, the newspaper story sort of like goes through the bill and who voted for it. Maybe there's a quote from the lawmakers or whatever. But then the TV story about that has got to be about like Joe Smith and his car shop who's taken a 15% hit, and he's going to have to lay two people off. And here he is talking about it emotionally. And
that's right. You need something, right? They would always say you need something to point a camera at. That's right. The other one that I remember a guy at NBC saying to me, one of my bosses at NBC saying, we can't report on things that haven't happened yet. we report on the news. We do the news. We don't do things that might happen in future. And that's also really complicated. So there it is.
Yeah. I'll give you one quick news story. I had a news photographers, as I know you know, are some of the best people in the world, some of the craziest, most fun to be around.
If I could bring them with me everywhere, I would. That's right.
Absolutely. I had a dear friend who's a news photographer who used to refer to everybody on camera as lens meat.
Yeah. We've done that. What is it? Meat puppets. I've heard that too. Meat puppets. Yeah, exactly right. That's exactly right. Yep. That's right.
Jacob, this is so fascinating. This is honestly the first show I've ever done where I have like completely not even checked the time. I could sit in here and talk to you all day long.
I know. I love the way we've clicked together on this stuff. And I love that we're connecting on some really fundamentals here, even though our ostensible interests are a little distance from one another. There's something really.
No, it seems like we're heading in the same direction here.
I like it. And I think there is something about a coalition of, for me, it's the coalition of restraint. I have a book project that I'm working on now called Great Ideas We Should Not Pursue. And it's sort of that's the whole umbrella we're under right now, you and me.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I always like to ask people what makes them hopeful going forward. And I think you're a good source for it. You've got some good hope. So what do you say?
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, I will first of all say, like, we are lucky we are living at the best possible time in the history of humanity. We're in a great time. Like when you have a medical emergency, when you need help, humanity is ready for you in a way that it has never been before. Like we are at the very vanguard, I would say, of the most wonderful time to be alive. So there's a lot of really positive things, I think, that are just inherent in waking up every day. I'm a very grateful and optimistic person just about the whole nature of humanity as a whole.
Love it. Yeah.
And then I would also say there is enormous creativity and love and empathy in young people right now. They are speaking about their financial hardships in a way that we were too embarrassed to, or were taught somehow not to. They are talking about their mental health crises in an open and wonderful way that's really, given everyone an ability to understand when they're feeling good and feeling bad and why that might be. And all of that, like all of the sort of frankness and creativity of young people right now, I think is going to take us to a place where there's a big sort of cultural allergy coming, I think, to the kind of crap that's being foisted on us, the slop that's being foisted on us right now.
Yeah.
And I take a huge amount of comfort from that. And I really, so for me, there's something about, we should all of us at all ages should continue to do this work. But if the hard work and the energy and the lack of embarrassment, I guess is the term, in young people really does it for me right now. That's really got me feeling good about it. So,
awesome.
I'll leave you with the thing my 12-year-old said the other day. She said, ChatGPT makes art so much better than I can, but I really like making art. And so I'm going to do it anyway, because it makes me angry that it's trying to do it better than I can. And I was like, man, that's so good, right?
Wow.
Just because we can do the art better doesn't mean we have to do it that way. You can still make art even if you're not making it as good as ChatGPT does, as good, right, with air quotes around it, as ChatGPT does. So the insight that takes to see that and say, no thanks, is the stuff we'll need to follow.
I love that. Yeah. Awesome. Jacob, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. This is only the first conversation we're going to have, because we'll definitely have to do this again.
Love it. I love it, John. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. We're in a place where we've already lost a couple of those. I would say voice is pretty much gone, because you sign up for the terms of service. We live in a terms of service world. You're not allowed to call up Tim Cook and say, you know what, I'd like to renegotiate these terms of service before I use your phone. You got to... The mystery hand of the algorithm is guiding, once you sign the terms of service, you have no visibility into what am I seeing and why. That's right. So that black box economy that we're all in right now has really blown that up. I think that's absolutely true. Now, I do, however, think that we are in a world where, for years and years and years, the United States has only ever really been very good at regulating either death or financial loss. It's really the only two things we've been good at, is like, does it kill you? Does it cost you money? That's where the laws start to get involved. Otherwise, we're pretty carte blanche in this country. Well, I think that we are starting to enter a world in which regulators are starting to recognize, there are some other harms besides physical and financial harms. And those include things like, our kids being programmed away from making friends, right? So New York State and California are both working on bills that would regulate companionship in the AI world, making AI companions, right? We're seeing state law start regulating in Illinois, for instance, therapy AI, saying you can't replace human therapists with AI because of the dangers of that. So I do have some hope that even though, these folks are operating literally with the resources of nation states without any kind of nation state democracy inputs, there is, however, some state law brewing that I think could set the stage for some national stuff. And, and we shouldn't forget that, like, the EU regulates the bejesus out of it. And China, who we weirdly keep saying we need to not regulate ourselves so that we can catch up with China, they regulate the bejesus out of AI. And so I think there's actually enormous appetite, at least at the state level, for regulating this stuff and for there being responding to some democratic input here. But at the federal level, that is definitely not happening.
Yeah. Well, let us hope between the time you and I speak now and this thing goes out across the internet that doesn't change radically. I think there's some chance that it does, but we'll just punt that for a little bit.
Yeah, see you in court is what the states would say. That's exactly right.
That's right. And hopefully that would work. I want to get into a little bit about, and I want to get into all the near-term harms, but before we get there, I want to talk about extinction risk a little bit and why you have this sort of, I forget the way you characterized it, but you said you just sort of can't sit with it. You can't. You can't
I think I have a little bit of a psychological allergy to it. I also, in the news business, you develop, there's so much hardship in the world.
Yes.
Right. And doing the job well requires having real empathy for everybody you speak with and every subject you think about. If you can't process the emotions of it, then you're going to do a terrible job of communicating to people why it's important and what the stakes are and the rest of it, right? But as a result, you also develop a real set of calluses, I think, is one way to think about it, or maybe a filtration system.
Yeah, very high bullshit meter.
High bullshit meter, and you also can't internalize the emotions of everything you encounter in a day.
Totally.
Because there's so much going on, right?
Totally.
And I remember at one point, this is a terrible story, but my daughter, I was with my very young daughter at the time, and I was gleefully explaining to somebody in our backyard how great it is that these neighborhood cats kill off the rats that were in our neighborhood, and I was gleefully describing like how this cat was like torturing this rat to death. It was a really horrible moment. And I looked over and my little daughter, cute daughter, it has tears in her eyes, listening to me give this horrible, account of the murder of this cute little, mouse or whatever it was. And my wife was like, yeah, you have been in this job a little long. Like you've been in this job a little long. And she was right. I'd been made a little callous in that way. And so when I think about this one, right, this is truly one where, and I think any resident of a big city, right, especially New Yorkers will recognize, you can't, every fight you witness on the subway, you can't get involved in. You gotta go, you just gotta keep your head down sometimes, right?
Yep.
And in my case, I don't have a great intellectual grasp of, I don't have my arms around the idea of existential AI risk, and the people that I do speak to in the subjects that I do have my arms around, they're choosing not to think about it very much either, largely because they just, at least the technical people say, I don't think we're on that path. And so that's given me what I guess I needed to sort of say, well, I'm going to focus then on what I know, what I've spent a lot of time researching, and that's the psychological and economic harms rather than Skynet. But does that mean that it's not coming? No. Am I a good source for knowing whether that's true or not? No. But I can't tell you as much as your other guests have, simply because I've just had to put a break on it somewhere.
No, it's so fascinating. I wonder a lot of times, like, what it is in me that I read the Eliezer Time article once, and I was like, click, like, oh my God, this can't be right. And I've just, been trying to.
I think that's right. And for me, it is I had an early experience. My turning point was I was at a dinner party in San Francisco with a bunch of young app makers, and they were receiving a presentation from a pair of psychologists who were addiction specialists. They were newly minted PhDs who had studied addiction. And they were telling these really scary stories about the ways in which people who are truly addicted to a thing, i.e. they have a thing they can't stop doing even though it does them harm, the ways in which their brains justify that addiction, concoct all kinds of personal stories that make the addiction make sense in your life, and the ways in which your external stimuli make your choices for you. They told the story, for instance, of that if you take people who used to be addicted to cocaine and were used to doing it in a nightclub, if you take those people back to a nightclub, you boom the bass at them, you hit them with the flashing lights, the smells of the place, the dark room, and then you show them a plate of baking soda and you say, this is baking soda. And then you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how badly do you want to snort this baking soda? These people who have been clean, gotten their act together, all that stuff, they'll say, it's like an 11. I would do anything to snort that baking soda right now, even though I know it's baking soda, even though you're telling me that it's baking soda, right? And I was listening to this presentation. The takeaway from that presentation was not, isn't that awful and we need to do everything we can to avoid that. These two psychologists were dressing up their expertise as a consultancy that they were calling Dopamine. And they were going to sell that expertise to any app maker or company that wanted to pay them so that they could take that knowledge they had and make your app as addictive as possible.
Holy hell.
Was their thing. And I just thought, oh, this is where this is going. This scientific research into human behavior and the patterns it follows is going to join up with this. This was 2016 or so when I was at this. Is going to join up with this fledgling AI technology that I had already seen people starting to use that is great at picking up patterns and regurgitating them. And I just thought, oh, a real problem is coming here. And that's what that's what set me on my path.
Wow. All right. Let me walk you through. When I talk to someone about AI extinction risk, I walk them through 3 things. I tell people there's 3 things you need to know about AI extinction risk. We'll go through them and tell me. I think they're completely non-controversial, but maybe you'll feel differently, or just your thoughts on them. So I think number 1, the companies themselves, the CEOs, and the leading outside experts all agree these systems have the near-term potential to kill us all.
I mean, they say that, like, as you know, right, in news, you can't responsibly attribute belief to anybody, like, because there's no way to fact check people's beliefs.
Yep.
They certainly say that, right? And some of them, I think, say it because it's good marketing for the weird reasons that we were talking about earlier.
Yep.